You think you're fine. You've been running on 6 hours of sleep for months, maybe years, and you're functional. You're showing up. You're getting things done. So you've convinced yourself that your body adapted, that you're one of those people who just needs less sleep, that the tiredness you feel is normal and manageable. Every single one of those beliefs is wrong. And the most dangerous part is not the sleep you're losing tonight. It is the accumulating damage that has been building silently inside your brain for every night you've been telling yourself that 6 hours is enough. Sleep debt is not a metaphor. It is a measurable, neurological, physiological reality with consequences that extend far beyond feeling tired. Consequences that affect your memory, your emotional regulation, your immune function, your cardiovascular health, your metabolic system, and your long-term risk of neurodegenerative disease. In this video, you are going to understand exactly what sleep debt is doing to your brain and body right now, why you cannot feel the full extent of the damage, and what the science says about whether and how it can be reversed. The first thing you need to understand is why you cannot accurately assess your own level of sleep deprivation. This is not a flaw in your self-awareness. It is a documented neurological phenomenon. Research by sleep scientist Hans van Dongen at the University of Pennsylvania demonstrated something that should be required reading for every person who prides themselves on functioning well on little sleep. When people are chronically sleep restricted, meaning consistently getting less than the sleep their brain requires, their subjective sense of sleepiness stabilizes after a few days, even as their objective cognitive performance continues to decline. In plain language, you stop feeling as tired as you actually are. Your brain adapts its perception of its own impairment. You feel fine. You are not fine. The studies measured reaction time, working memory, cognitive throughput, and participants operating on 6 hours of sleep per night for 2 weeks performed as poorly on cognitive tests as people who had been awake for 48 hours straight. But those same participants rated themselves as only slightly sleepy. The impairment was invisible to the person experiencing it. This is why sleep debt is so dangerous. Because the damage accumulates in silence while you tell yourself and everyone around you that you're doing great. Now let's talk about what is actually happening inside your brain while you sleep. Because understanding this mechanism is what makes the cost of sleep debt visceral rather than abstract. During sleep, particularly during slow-wave deep sleep, your brain activates a system that was only discovered in 2013, the glymphatic system. Named for its dependence on glial cells, this is essentially the brain's waste clearance mechanism, a network of channels that expands during sleep and flushes out metabolic byproducts that accumulate during waking hours. The most significant of these byproducts is beta-amyloid, a protein that, when it accumulates in excess, forms the plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease. During a full night of quality sleep, the glymphatic system clears beta-amyloid and other toxic proteins with remarkable efficiency. During a night of insufficient or fragmented sleep, that clearance is incomplete. And when insufficient sleep becomes chronic, the accumulation compounds. Research published in Science in 2019 demonstrated that even a single night of sleep deprivation produced a significant increase in beta-amyloid accumulation in the human brain. Not years of deprivation. One night. The implications of that finding for people who have been chronically undersleeping for months or years are serious enough that neuroscientist Matthew Walker, author of Why We Sleep, has called insufficient sleep one of the most significant and underappreciated public health crises of the modern era. Beyond the glymphatic system, sleep debt has measurable consequences across every major biological system in the body. In the endocrine system, chronic sleep restriction elevates cortisol levels, suppresses growth hormone secretion, and disrupts the regulation of leptin and ghrelin, the hormones that control hunger and satiety, which is why sleep-deprived people consistently consume more calories, crave higher carbohydrate foods, and have greater difficulty maintaining a healthy weight, regardless of diet and exercise habits. In the immune system, research from the University of California, San Francisco showed that people who slept less than 6 hours per night were 4 times more likely to develop a cold when exposed to the rhinovirus compared to people who slept 7 or more hours. In the cardiovascular system, a large-scale study published in the European Heart Journal found that short sleep duration was associated with a 48% increased risk of developing or dying from coronary heart disease. And in the brain itself, beyond the glymphatic findings, sleep is when the hippocampus consolidates the day's learning into long-term memory, when emotional memories are processed and regulated by the prefrontal cortex, and when the default mode network performs the integrative functions that support creativity, problem-solving, and self-referential thinking. When you cut sleep, you are not just cutting rest. You are cutting the biological maintenance window that keeps every system in your body and brain functioning at the level you need to live the life you want. So can sleep debt be repaid? And if so, how? The answer is more nuanced than either the optimistic, just sleep in on weekends advice, or the pessimistic, the damage is permanent narrative. The research suggests a middle position that is both reassuring and sobering. Some of the consequences of sleep debt are reversible with consistent, adequate sleep over time. Cognitive performance, mood regulation, immune function, and metabolic markers all show meaningful recovery with sustained sleep restoration. But the recovery is not linear and not immediate. A landmark study by researchers at the University of Colorado found that a single weekend of recovery sleep, the strategy most people unconsciously rely on, was insufficient to reverse the metabolic dysregulation caused by a week of sleep restriction. The body's insulin sensitivity, caloric intake patterns, and circadian rhythm disruption persisted beyond the weekend recovery period. Full metabolic recovery required sustained adequate sleep across multiple weeks. And some consequences, particularly those related to long-term beta-amyloid accumulation and the structural changes that chronic sleep loss produces in the prefrontal cortex, may not be fully reversible. This is not meant to produce despair. It is meant to produce urgency, because the most powerful intervention available is the one you can begin tonight. The sleep debt recovery protocol that the research supports is built on 3 foundations. The first is sleep extension. Not just sleeping more on weekends, but committing to a consistent sleep schedule that prioritizes 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night, with fixed wake and sleep times that anchor your circadian rhythm. Consistency of timing matters as much as duration. Irregular sleep schedules disrupt the circadian system independently of total sleep time, producing what researchers call social jet lag. The second foundation is sleep architecture optimization, ensuring that the sleep you get includes sufficient slow-wave deep sleep, where glymphatic clearance primarily occurs, and sufficient REM sleep, where emotional processing and memory consolidation happen. This means managing the factors that fragment and suppress deep sleep. Alcohol, which dramatically reduces slow-wave sleep despite its sedating effect. Screens and blue light exposure within 2 hours of bedtime, which suppress melatonin. Room temperature above 18 to 19 degrees Celsius, which impairs the body's natural temperature drop required for deep sleep onset. And caffeine consumed after midday, which remains in the system blocking adenosine receptors for 6 to 8 hours. The third foundation is what sleep researchers call sleep pressure management. Understanding that the adenosine that accumulates during waking hours and drives sleep pressure is your brain's natural mechanism for ensuring deep restorative sleep, and that napping strategically, 20 minutes maximum before 3 in the afternoon, can support recovery without disrupting nighttime sleep architecture. You made it to the end of this video. And if you have been telling yourself that 6 hours is enough, I want to leave you with one question to sit with tonight. What would be different in your life if your brain was operating at full capacity every single day? Not the capacity you think you have now. The capacity that 8 hours of quality sleep, sustained over weeks, actually produces. In focus, in emotional regulation, in creativity, in physical health, in the quality of your presence in every relationship and every moment that matters to you. That question is not rhetorical. It is an invitation. Start tonight, not next Monday. Tonight. Share this video with someone who wears their exhaustion like a badge, because sometimes the most caring thing you can do for someone is show them that rest is not weakness. It is the foundation of everything. Subscribe to continue this journey, because the next video is going to touch something that few adults have the courage to look at directly: the unhealed inner child, and what the wounds you carried from childhood are doing to your adult relationships right now, with your partner, with your children, with your friends, and with yourself. It is the video that most people need to watch, and the fewest people know they need. See you there.